Hello and welcome back to the Projector Stories podcast. I am Sarah, a 1-3 emotional projector.
I'm Lora, a 5-1 splenic projector.
And in this podcast, we are both students of human design in a sense, and we are just talking about what our journey is in terms of human design, kind of under the umbrella of human design. But we both have the 1156 channel of storytelling, and we're both right-minded. And so it's never a linear path that we take when we talk and refer back to human design as kind of like our guiding post. But if you've been around here for a while, you already know all of this. So that is the spiel. Lora, do you have anything that has been going on with you in your life, in the movie, materially, physically, emotionally, mentally, that you want to touch on this week?
So it's funny because the day of, I always feel like, oh, I have nothing to say today. And then my brain kicks in and thinks of all the things it wants to say. And sometimes I write it down and sometimes I don't. And I chose not to. So we're just gonna see where consciousness takes us. Trying not to be strategic. It's like weird because like doing this, it feels strategic to come here, which we do sometimes. We have a list of the things that we want to get off our chest that we want to talk about rather than just airing out whatever it is without a plan. Um, Not that there's anything wrong with that, but to kick off, which is like the most relevant thing that's happening this morning, is um, we're, I guess, hiring a contractor to do work on our backyard. We have a canyon in our landscape and a lot of gopher damage and a lot of other damage that like we need a retaining wall put in and stairs because like we don't have stairs to get to our garden, which is on a slope, and it's like very impractical, and it's just been a long time coming. Anyways, my mother was pulling weeds out in the front yard yesterday, and some person just drove up to her and started talking to her, seeing if she needs any work done. So, on that front, like my mother being a generator, it makes sense. Like she responded to him, to which like she, was her correct self as a generator. Um, and he like I don't know him. I didn't interact with him. I don't know anything about him, but it's just like very cringy to me, the concept of people like cold calling of him. Like he said he was doing work in the neighborhood on another house and he has extra material, so he's just going around seeing if anyone else needs work done so he can, finish off with the extra materials that he has on hand. But it's super cringe to like go drive up around the neighborhood and see if you come across any individuals and ask if they need any work done. It reminds me of people who hang out in front of stores and try to solicit, which like they give me the heebie-jeebies and I hate them so much. And like sometimes I go up to them and I say like there's no soliciting allowed here. Which I mean sometimes I've only done it once and that was an uncomfortable experience for me to be confrontational and do that. But because I just try to avoid them, and like some stores, like it just recently happened at our Target, and then the Target entrance kind of like had a side door which you're not technically supposed to use as an exit because it's an entrance. So we went in through that door for an entrance and we're like, let's use that door to leave because we don't want to interact with the people standing out front near the actual exit. And then like even as we left, I heard them calling like, Miss, ma'am. And I'm just like, who are you to do this with your just, I don't know, like whether they're generators and it was correct for them to enter into that situation in which they solicit. I don't know, but like soliciting is cringe, especially when you know human design. Anyways, this person, contractor came in and solicited work from us. And so he came by today, this morning. And I guess the agreement has been made that he's going to do work. And like, I don't know, like maybe he's a manifestor, can just like go out and do right away. He's like, okay, I'll come tomorrow to start working. We're like, what? And he's like, I need a deposit now, like this much money. And we're like, whoa. And it's interesting, like with the relationship, it's not a compromise. The composite has an authority and should be honored as an authority for a composite. And so like my mother and father as their composite have emotional authority because my dad has, well, I believe has emotional authority. And yet this dude is like, okay, I need money now, like let's do this now. And it's just like they had no time to process this decision. He was just go, 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 which to me screams manifester or manifesting generator. Um, and non-emotional to be just like go, go, go,
Definitely.
let's do it now. Anyways, so like that happened, and I'm just, watching it from my little lens of like not interacting with this person. Like, I mean, it just happened so fast. It was the blink of an eye, and like boom, they already gave him a check for a big sum of money for deposit for him to do landscape work, which is needed. Like it's very much needed for our yard because it's not safe, and we just have a lot of soil erosion going on and we need the support. But yeah, it's been a morning.
Yeah, I was giggling along with the story because I feel so similarly about the soliciting thing.
Everyone does. Who likes a solicitor? No one. Just like stop soliciting.
Well, there's people that do that are like they like
Who?
having the people, well, I know people who do because they like having people pay attention to them and having someone to talk to, even if the reason that they're talking to you is because they're trying to get something out of you. You know what I mean? So like there are those people that are starved for attention out there that are like, "Ooh, this is my opportunity that somebody's going to pay attention to me and my like stupid jokes," you know? So it's like you think that nobody does, but like there are people who get solicited and are like, oh, they're like drinking in the water that of communication that they never have because nobody talks to them. That's me being super like overgeneralizing to such an insane degree, but like I have seen it in action. But I think that Laura's right. The mass majority of people don't like it, and it makes me wonder about the people who sign up to do it because it feels like, why would you sign up to do this?
Well, why? Okay, so I was invited in 2020 to a sacred economy gift economy, like sacred circle. It was like I've talked about it before with you and like the spiritual benefits that I received from being part of that group and like the wisdom I gleaned. But it was a gift economy and I was invited in, and my spleen, I was 2020, so I was already in my experiment. Like I just said yes. Like it just felt correct to be like, okay, to hop right in. When I was invited by someone I didn't really know or had ever talked to. Um, Someone that I knew from working with like a separate coach once upon a time. And so part of saying yes to this was having to reach out and like introduce more people into the gift economy, like kind of like a pyramid scheme, but it wasn't a pyramid scheme, but it kind of seemed like a pyramid scheme. And like essentially it shouldn't be, but if it's non-functional and it's not going well, then it does end up being a pyramid scheme. But like that's not the purpose of it. Like there is no top. It's what's the word for it? It's the word that Richard Rudd uses for Gene Key 45. There's heteroarchy, it's not high, there's no hierarchy, but there's heterarchy, like an even playing field. And part of that was having to call people and like try to recruit them. So like I was doing it and it felt cringe, but I was invited to, and that was my responsibility as being part of the group. So like I get it. Like there are ways that you can enter into that, whether it's like through strategy and authority or not, but doesn't necessarily feel good. Like, but again, maybe for some generators it's satisfying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I also think that, sometimes I look around when I'm not having a great day and I'm like, everybody's doing things that they don't really want to do in order to get by.
Yeah.
And so there's also probably a decent share of that going on of just like people trying, like needing to make money and like being willing to do certain things. Like some people could sell. I was on the phone with a PSENG rep, which is an electric and gas company rep, for like 30 minutes yesterday while they were just explaining the same thing over and over to me. And I'm like, this person has a 26, like either has a 2644 or he has a 26, because it was like his desire to explain it like just transcended the need to, it was like he just kept wanting to talk about this thing, even though I'm like, you can't be this passionate about it, like it's just a natural tendency for you to want to talk about the thing that you're doing. And so it's interesting thinking about these types of things because some people for me, like if I'm selling something, there needs to be a connection to the thing that I'm selling. And that's probably because I don't have the 2644, and I'm not doing it for a tribal reason. There's not that kind of tribal quality of kind of trying to bring something in for the tribe. And so, you're doing something that maybe to the like external world, maybe not exactly like shooting straight from the hip. But like for your tribe, you're doing what you can for them to survive. So it's like, it's kind of like you do what you have to do. But for me, it's like I only can sell things that I believe in currently, or that I like would practice or use or participate in myself. Whereas for other people, certain people, like they could literally sell, as it said, snow to an Eskimo. It's like, and it's because they like the art of selling, or they like just the energy of selling. Like that's just part of who they came in to be, and I have to like give space for that to exist, because for me, I'm like, out of integrity to sell anything that you don't believe in. But like some people just sell because that's what their body does,
Yeah.
So no judgment there, but it's just funny because of thinking that when you think everyone's the same, when you see someone who can sell something that they clearly don't care about, you can start to make all kinds of moralistic judgments about them, because you're like, well, you don't believe in that, but it's like actually like it's just mechanical.
But at the same time, 26 still has to believe in it to a certain extent. Like you can't just sell anything. Even though Roz talked about, his experience with his 26 and having to sell. I forgot what he was, but like he sold things over the phone. I don't know what it was. Um, but for me, like my 26 is a node, which on my personality side, which I think flavors it to the extent where like I don't necessarily identify with it, even though it's what I see and therefore it is a part of me. But I don't necessarily want to have to sell because it's cringy and it does not feel good or satisfying in any way, shape, or form or bring success. But yeah, it's interesting to think about. And there's another thread that I've had in my head that was connected to this, but I think I forgot it already.
Yeah, and I think that
Sorry.
too, like, no, it's okay. In the material way, there's kind of like an impetus to sell things. Maybe specifically out of the ego. I don't know. I haven't listened to that in a very long time, so I can't say. Um, but there's an egoic quality to being a salesperson. I remember the first job that I worked at, and I'm not saying that it's a negative egoic thing. It's like, but there is a quality of that in being a really good salesperson. And um, the first company I worked for was a energy company, actually, and there were like 30-year-old guys who started this company, were making multi-million dollars, and like the ego on the head of sales, like he was so charming, and he was an Aries, and there's no doubt that he had some Aries channel leading out of the ego. I'm thinking the 2551, but he was just such a like charismatic, could connect, and like also had that like innocent quality of like you knew he was out to sell you something, but like it was almost like endearing, which you don't feel like that a lot about people. I felt like he was super abrasive and he was a pain in the ass, and you don't think he was a good person, but like there was an innocence to it where he wasn't like thinking about all of this. It was just like he was just doing it. And of course, there's plenty of not self stuff going on, because with everyone, there's not self stuff going on. Um, but this is like probably I had listened to the material way before this conversation, because I feel like it would bring a lot more depth into what we're talking about. But you're just gonna have to deal with my very surface level knowledge on it, right?
Well, related to the innocence, I saw a reel on Instagram the other day, that was a mother who gave her son her credit card so he can go into an ice cream store and buy an ice cream. Because like he wanted to do it. I don't know if she wanted him to do it by himself or he wanted to do it by himself, but like to gain that sense of independence. And so he went in, and then when he came out, she was like, "Oh, did you leave a tip?" He's like, "Yes." And she's like, "How much?" He's like, $50, which is just like the childhood innocence of like they have no real concept of money,
Yeah.
and they're just like, so cute and small. Or like I also like once saw a thing of a little kid doing a lemonade stand, and like he was charging like $50 for his lemonades.
Yeah.
Just like the the innocence of it. It's cute. Which is another topic that I wanted to bring up, not necessarily innocence, but childhood stuff. To segue, is that okay?
Oh yeah, yeah, for
So,
sure.
I've said on a previous episode that I don't really have many memories of myself as a child, but I have the memories of people telling me stuff about myself as a child that I make into memories. One of which is I don't know what I was thinking about, but it came out in my head. Um, wh- I so babies babies they learn to speak with words, right? Like they repeat the same word over and over again once they like learn it. And just thinking about like the development of language in a child is very unique to each individual child. And so like I have a nephew who's now 13 months old and he can say mama and make other noises, but and he can try to say pancake, but like it doesn't sound like that. I forgot what it actually sounds like. But he is unable to like use words yet to express himself. And I, on the other hand, spoke at a very young age, where when I was 1.5, it's like not much older than he is now, which is like wild to think about. Like I've heard this story before told to me, but like I never really processed like how much of a small child I was or a baby I was when this happened. But I started to speak in complete sentences by the time I was 18 months, a year and a half. And like my mom said that once she was talking to my aunt, not related to my mom by married to her by blood, but by marriage. And like we lived in the same apartment complex, so we interacted a lot in childhood. But you know, me being a projector, you overhear things and you want to get your little aura involved in other people. But like they were conversing, and then I don't know whether I was like in the car. I don't really remember the situation. So again, like very false memories. But like I asked my aunt how her doctor's appointment went because she went to the doctor and like I remembered that when I saw her the next time. I asked her, how is the doctor's? Which is like as a baby, as 18-month-old baby is ridiculous. And just like I never really thought about like how much of a projector trait that is of just like it's not like I want this, I want that, which I'm sure I've said as a child, but to like use my very limited language skills as a child to be like, hey, how did your doctor appointment go? Not that I used so many words because it was not even in English, it was in Croatian, but yeah, that just like was sort of unlocked in my memory. Well, not really my memory, but the fake memory that I have. And just thinking about um how our projector traits show up for us even at such a young age, or just not projector traits, but just like mechanics. It's wild and crazy. Um,
So true.
yeah, that's it for that thought. I have a lot
Uh,
of little bits and bites, like nothing really concrete
yeah.
or heavy or substantial this episode, but just lots of little things.
That's fine. Well, and it's, a couple things. I just want to I'm going to backtrack way backtrack cuz I just wanted to say as far as like our conversations go, like I've found that me coming pre-planned, like even with things that I just write down in passing to the podcast never ends in a way that feels like good. Like it feels like I not like it's like bad, but it doesn't feel like, ooh, that was good. Like it feels like I'm trying to get something out that I can't quite get out. So I'm probably going to stop entirely trying to like write anything down prior to podcasting, just because like it doesn't historically it just has not worked at all for me, even if the content's still good.
Yeah, it just
um
feels cringe, just like
yeah,
solicitors.
yeah, it just feels kind of cringe to do it. So it's like it's like I've decided if there's anything that comes up that I want to talk to Laura about before the podcast, I'm just gonna have to talk to her about it before the podcast, and maybe we'll bring it up again if there's more that we want to say. But um so that, and then the other thing, again, to backtrack, because I'm going to come back to what you just said, but I was also thinking about like as we were talking about the sales thing and the cringe thing and the soliciting thing, that I wonder like the what is the channel, is it the 2946? Yeah, my uncle and my friend Stephanie, who I work with, has that. And like that's like a big like money channel, I think. And my uncle was like selling combs to people in bars when he was like 8. um, because that was just like his like generator thing, I guess. Dude has made a lot of money, just to say, but um, he doesn't have anything defined in the ego. And so I also wonder about it from the generator perspective outside of the ego, like how much of it has to do with that. But that's backtracking even more. And now to come back to what Laura just said about her experience of like, or her memory slash not memory of like what she had going on. um yeah, I never thought about it like that, in terms of like, it's almost, I guess it's like you can look at these things from so many different angles and so many different vantage points, and you could look at them from different microscopes. So you can look at them like way close up or far away, and they bring to you different ideas. Like I've often talked about how, my need for attachment and my need for authenticity was pitted against each other because I had complex, basically, well, I had developmental trauma. And and I've also said multiple times, maybe not on this podcast, but like to a greater or lesser extent, everyone who is conditioned away from their true self, into their not self, has some form of developmental trauma. And so that's like a way like broad ranging sweeping statement, I know, but I don't necessarily think it's happening because like kids are being physically and emotionally abused to the level that we expect trauma to be. um like, the way that we think about it on like these crime shows and whatever, but more of the like the small ways that take you away from yourself, by unwitting parents who think that they're doing the best that they can for their kids based on the culture and the society, and the social ideals. And I say all of this before what I'm trying to get to with what Laura just said. I can look at that need for me, that need for authenticity pitted against my need for attachment, really being like a projector centric trait, because I'm, as a projector, as a child projector, you're always going to probably move towards your need for attachment over your need for authenticity, because you're so focused on the other, that's like an inherent aspect to the self. Whereas a manifester, or even a generator to a greater or lesser extent, may choose their need for authenticity over their need for attachment, more likely. So, again, different lenses, because again, I can look at this from the lens of like Dr. Lawrence Heller and his understanding of what developmental trauma is, and then also the understanding that as soon as we're getting pulled away from what is our true self, there's some level of conditioning that we have to detoxify from. And that can be labeled trauma just as easily if we want to look at it from that perspective.
Yeah. You always end, do you end abruptly? I don't know. I feel like I don't know how I end when I go on my tangents, but it's just like rightness.
Well,
I
I keep going, but sometimes I'm like, I need to take a breath.
so wait, do you want to keep going?
Well, no, I mean, I guess, to also just speak to like your memory thing. Um, it's just, yeah, it's just funny to think about how important other people are always going to be to our process and our uncovering our own awareness, um, as far as, our consciousness and like and its trajectory for growth is concerned. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's all I have to say on that topic, but I can move on to something else if
Well,
you.
relating to that topic, I can speak to it, especially as a five. But I remembered what I wanted to say before that I forgot and I totally blanked, which is backtracking back again. Not that it's important, but just to get it off my chest so I don't feel like it's unsaid. But to the solicitor thing, recently, like this past few days, I've been receiving random invitation, like not invitations, like, I guess friend requests on Facebook from people that I have mutual acquaintances with within the human design community. But I
Aw.
don't know these people and like I don't know their aura type and I just like as a five, I get so paranoid of like, why are you interacting with me? Like, who the hell are you? Like, if you send me a message, like maybe you're listening to this podcast, send me a message to say like who you are, because otherwise I don't know what you want from me. My fifth line is paranoid. And it's very concerned about interactions with others, which, you know, is not what I wanted to talk about the five, because I wanted to talk about the five. I wanted to say with the five how necessary it is to have the other. And recently I've been feeling, again, I don't remember my childhood to notice, like, was I doing the whole attachment thing or the whole authenticity thing? I really don't know. It's so hard to self-reflect on past moments. But in terms of like now and trying to be authentic versus trying to have attachment to people, um, as a five and as needing strangers, again, going back to the solicitor thing, like if you're a five, it's correct for you to interact with people you don't know on the street. So like, hey, I get it. Like there's correctness. Like my mother is a 3-5, and so like that random person to like drive past and be like, hey, cluing into that fifth line energy of hers to interact with her like is correct. Like my mother like usually receives a lot of weird interactions when we're out in stores. Like people want to connect with her for whatever reason. Um, People ask me again, they pick up on the five in terms of practicality for my personality, and like they'll ask me for like help with random things. Well, not people. I'm just thinking of like one particular situation, which was like a person who seemed like they had special needs, just like needed to understand what goes into spaghetti sauce because they were making spaghetti sauce, and so they're like, "What pasta do I get?" So I tried to help them picking out the appropriate pasta. But it's just like I get those types of quote unquote weird interactions from strangers that you wouldn't necessarily get. Um, but I'm going on a complete side tangent. What I wanted to say was about the five, the need for that connectivity. And like I've been feeling in like this moment, before I came on to the podcast of just like it's probably an expression, a capture, a photographic capture of like the bigger picture. But in the moment, I was feeling rather unfulfilled with like not being able to connect appropriately to people. I guess is a tangent. So here we go. Um, just thinking something I mentioned to Sarah, I think off off of our podcast was about motivation, or did we talk about motivation last episode? I don't really remember when what is said, but I was thinking about motivation and how in a lot of my interactions, the it pulls out innocence of like people don't, again, this is similar to what Sarah was saying with like people just like want someone to listen to them, not necessarily they don't want advice, or practicality from a five. But I've just been thinking like people who interact with me, like they're not necessarily coming to me strategically to be like, hey, I need you to help me with this thing practically because I want it, because I desire it, because I want to be mutated from it. No, people don't come to me for that reason or like wanting some practical help. So like it happens at home with my family members that they do, like they'll come to me for some fix that they need assistance with. But in terms of like my sister interacting with me, or people, just like other people, like they don't want that from me. And it just makes me feel so unfulfilled, unsuccessful as the fifth line projector of like not having the appropriate audience to which I can mutate, with my desire motivation. And makes me perhaps want to start an Instagram again, which I feel like I say 1,000 times, and then it never actually happens because the energy to do it is not there. The wanting is perhaps there, the wanting for that fifth line to like be useful, but like the actual energy to like make it happen, nope, don't got that. Um, but yeah, it makes me think about just like being a fifth line projector, needing to be there to guide appropriately, especially practically. Because like Sarah, while she's a projector, like her personality is a one. It's self introspective. It's like deepening her own foundation into her own awareness. Like one threes are like the most self introspective profile because both the one and the three are lower trigram. And that's like the only profile that is lower trigram, whereas like 4-6s are only upper trigram. But 4-6s are still like there for themselves. They have personal destiny as their, is it your purpose? I don't know what the terminology for that is. Whereas like for the transpersonal people, like we have transpersonal karma. we need the other. And it just, I don't know, like the itch. Maybe this is Pluto and Gate 60 feeling up all those limitations, but like the itch for reaching the appropriate strangers is there. And like, yeah, we have you, audience. You're great, but like don't know if I'm actually mutating you because it's like sort of a one-way street into your ear holes. You're not talking back at us. Um, but yeah, and so it cycling back to what was said with like childhood, it's like so important to raise children appropriately, understanding their mechanics so that they know what they can do to live out their true potential and to fulfill their mechanics in a healthy way. To have whether it's like attachment or authenticity or whatever it is that they need to feel good about themselves. And we don't
Yeah.
get that. We don't get that with like unaware parents. Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and it's a balance, it's like you're never gonna be able to feel complete with just one side of that, I would imagine. Um, because we as much as we are our own individual self, like we are connected to a greater whole, there's both, happening simultaneously. And I understand and love everything that you said, and where you're coming from. And I think that, I don't know if you listened to it, but Ann Winiger sends out she has an email newsletter that she sends out, and she gave a 6-minute clip from Rob. And in it, he talks about how communion is the ultimate goal of a nine-centered being. It's our ability to connect with someone from our awareness and to share that awareness with someone else is the penultimate capacity that we have reached as these nine-centered beings. It's not a small thing. Like, to get to the heart of our unique awareness and be able to share it with someone else so that they can hear it and then be able to share their unique awareness with us, not in a affront or as a debate, but as just like, are you watching this movie? And so when that is not present, the feeling of lack is going to be there. And I think that has been, my driving force for everything that I've done imperfectly, but like still at my, all of my attempts have been towards this, even my attempts in being who it is that I am authentically, individuated as my true self, not my not self, is in an attempt to get to this communion. And so it's not a small thing, and it's not something that we just are entitled to. It's something that we have to, like, our awareness has to expand into being able to have the capacity for it, because many people will never get to that point where they're able to share their feeling. I think what Laura is touching on is an important, like, feeling that we get as projectors, but as humans too. It's like a specific type of unfulfillment that a lot of people are running away from in order to, or not in order to, but they're running away from it by overworking in jobs that aren't correct for them. If you're a projector, being a super slave, distracting yourself with subpar things that feel slightly satisfying but don't go all the way, allowing your attention to be put on people who don't truly recognize you. All of those things are our attempt to kind of soothe the wound of not having that communion readily available to us. And when it comes to uh what we're working towards, and I use the term working very lightly, because again, this is not like an egoic trying to prove ourselves thing. This is a true, I think, genuine desire to be put into our rightful place in the universe, like just fit into the cog that we belong in, put in our right location fractal with the right people who see us correctly, not to be more not to be something that our minds have conceived of, and anything our mind wants of us too, in a sense, whatever the prestige, the specific kind of, I guess you could say, social success, all of that stuff is trash in comparison to the communion that we may end up having with another individual soul for a moment, or as Ross said in the audio, or a lifetime, who knows how long it is. But that kind of, that capacity for breaking out of our physical shells, our bodies, like allowing the passenger, our true self, to be able to not be so distracted by our mind that it's actually able to share our genuine awareness potential, is just a huge fucking thing. And so I don't think it's something that is out of reach by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think that it is a process thing. I don't think that it's either you make it or you don't. It's that you continue kind of in your imperfectness of your conditioned self, moving towards being deconditioned. You keep doing things and speaking to people and kind of honing your awareness to see like and feel into like where the right and the correct decisions and path for you is, versus where it's not. And this is, I guess, specifically too for like fives and for 6-2s and for anyone who has transpersonal karma too, like the capacity to be able to have correct relationships with people may feel more, like it may, you may feel it missing more, or you may feel the pangs of it maybe more than someone who doesn't. But I certainly, like, my whole wanting to build a strong foundation for myself is in purpose to be able to commune with someone else. Like, it's not like and because I am a projector after all, like that is my like romance, that is my end goal, that is my reason for everything that I've been doing, everything that I have sacrificed to in order to make decisions correctly as myself. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if this really is, there's no answer here, obviously, Laura, so I'm sorry, but
Today, I don't even know if I had a question, just like feeling unfulfilled, but it brings up very interesting points. Sorry, did you want to finish your thought?
no, no, you can go
Okay.
ahead.
Certain things that come to mind are how the world is such a big place and at the same time it's such a small place, like with what you being said, like it's the 900 being is here for trans person for communion or for the communion of awareness, whatever it is. But it makes me think, like at first I thought about um you know, when this aura type came into existence, not the aura type, but like the nine-centered being came into existence was, right before the Industrial Revolution, and how there's like a greater picture to the evolution of humans to life. Not that like there is a particular godlike being that crafted this reality to be what it is for a strategic purpose, but more so that evolution has played out in a strategic way for the program, for certain purposes to be fulfilled. Thinking like I just said the same thing, but replaced God with program. Wow. But just thinking about how we are today. Like we are talking to you through a technological device. You are hearing us. We are reaching people we wouldn't have perhaps interacted with if we did not have technology to connect us across the world. We have people who go to Instagram to like share their or any form of social media, whether it's Twitter or Threads or whatever else is on the internet these days. Shout out to Periscope, whoever was on Periscope back in the Periscope days. That was a fun platform before Instagram was given the rights to like that type of technology. But the the world today is structured in a way that allows for us to be able to reach people who are of our fractal that we otherwise wouldn't have necessarily been able to reach if we didn't have the technologies that we have. And so I see it as like, all this has happened and kind of exploded with the Industrial Revolution, especially like in modern years, like things have really progressed and advanced because they're gonna plateau. Like we're not gonna continue to advance and advance once the cross of planning kind of dissipates in 2027. Because like it's been this cross that has really allowed for this coinciding with the evolution of the nine-centered being. it kind of seems like it goes hand in hand. Is like we have this boom in industrialization to allow for the ninth standard being to fulfill its purpose of communion with one another, of being able to commune with the correct fractal. And at the same time, like the world is so small because it makes me think of the 6 degrees of separation and how like you call my phone does not listen to like my phone's just been talking about the industrial revolution. When I put my phone on do not disturb mode, it doesn't care. It's like, no, 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 we're still going to disturb you. Sorry, we don't care that you're choosing not to be interrupted. We're still going to try to interrupt you. However, like I'm not getting missed calls notifications. Like people try to call me when I'm not looking at my phone and I don't get a notification of it. And I'm aware of this. Like, I don't know how to change it. So it's like people want to call me when I'm on my phone, but if I'm not on my phone, then I can't see who's trying to reach me. It's frustrating, but first world problems, which is a politically incorrect term. But anyways, first world problems. 6 degrees of separation. We can have access to like the randomest people in the world through our 6 degrees of separation or connection or whatever the phrase is. And, you might think like, oh, what's the point of that? But like you share your awareness with person A, that person gets mutated through your neutrino stream, entering their neutrino stream of like what you're sharing with them. And then that person mutates and then shares their awareness with person B, and then person B connects to person C. And you go through that passageway, and you are mutating people with your awareness one by one, just not directly, but like you are reaching the extent of your connectivity with the world through whatever it is that you're sharing without really being there for the dominoes to fall because you're not witnessing it. It's not like you pushing the domino um little tower and like being there for every cascading piece to come down, but you are there in spirit and there energetically for the first one at least, and then it's just like one by one they all tumble and mutation happens and spreads and takes over. And so your awareness does have an impact, but it's just like you like to be there, you want to see the dominoes fall, you want to watch them, it's satisfying to be like, aha, whether you are a projector and like I brought you success, I can see the impact, or if you're a manifestor and you're having impact, I can see the impact of what I'm doing. um, it is satisfying to witness it, whether, you if you can, but like it's not necessarily going to happen for everyone. Um, anyways, like those are the two like thoughts that I had in relation to what you said. Like first, it's wild to think about the the evolution of humankind and how like the program impacting the world with the cross kind of coincided with the nine-centered being, like two separate things happening at the same time for a purpose. It seems like there's a purpose to it, whether there is or isn't. It's neither here nor there. But then at the same time, like the world is such a small place when you really, really think about it. And like you feel like you're alone and you're an island and like no one's there to hear you, but you are not witnessing the consequences, therefore you feel alone. And like those consequences are actually indeed happening, I think, for the most part. um, Whether for the good or the bad. Like maybe you're negatively mutating people and you're not aware of it. Um, but yeah, those are my two main thoughts in response to what you said.
Yeah, it made me, what you were saying made me think about the quote that I posted a while back about Ra that says, like, we all have our own fractal line, and you either are ready for somebody when you meet them or you're not. And how much the not being ready for that person has to do with you being so distracted by your mind that you're not actually able to see what's there. And, there's been so many instances of that. Like, I had a dream last night. This is very tangential, but nonetheless, I had a dream last night, and my ex, like, of, I want to say almost 10 years ago, 9 years, was in it. And one of the themes of that relationship is like never really being able to be together. Like, we both wanted each other, but we both had all of these internal blocks from our own traumas that like prevented us from ever being able to open up and be vulnerable with each other. And the theme of the dream was like me at a party and like looking for him and like seeing him come in, but then never being able to find him. And I thought about that a lot because I was like not ready for that person. They were not ready for me. We could not see. We could not see we could not have, we may have had like a moment of it, but we couldn't keep that level of awareness active because of our mind's patterns and our mind's ability to kind of yank our awareness outside of what we're there to see and put it into the conditioned pattern of what we're used to looking at and used to seeing. And so yeah, there's something just to kind of touch on with the fractal nature of reality and like understanding that where you are right now is a reflection of where you are in multiple different worlds. Where you are right now is physically manifest, it's a reflection of that world, but also who you come in contact with is a reflection of your emotional world and your mental world as well. And that's not to say that you might come into contact with different people or not, depending on if your awareness shifts. But those people that you come in contact with are going to have a different effect on you if you're able to see them more clearly because of your awareness having become more opened or becoming less really just blinded by your mental concepts of what this or that or the other thing already is. And so, there's so much around us already that we cannot see because of our conditioning. Like, even where I am sitting right now, way more aware than I was 9 years ago. There's still all kinds of blind spots everywhere that happen to me all of the time because of my mind's ability to hijack my consciousness completely. And I don't know, it gives me seeing the way that my reality has shifted and changed as my awareness has shifted and changed is so interesting because the material quality of my reality has not actually shifted. And the only thing that shifted is my perspective, how I see it. And I have the sense, sensing circuit over here with all of my channels, but I have the sense that the closer I get to my own awareness, the closer I get materially to the types of people that are going to recognize me, the closer I get to the type of material circumstances that are correct for me, etc., 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 because everything is everything. And so my main concern, as it always has been and always will be, and maybe this is, I don't want to say always will be, but as a 1-3, my main concern is basically circumambulating my own self so I can get to a place where my consciousness is such that I'm not missing things that are there for me, that are crystals, that are gems, that are there for me, that I cannot see because of my mind. And yeah, those are my thoughts, Laura. So on what you just said, I don't know if you want to go somewhere else or if you want to touch on anything I just said.
Well, I sort of have a tangent, but we don't need to go into it. Um, if there's something else you want to share.
No, I think I'm good. I'll circle back to it if it pops into my consciousness.
But like, is there anything that like you came to the table with? Or we said like at the beginning, no, that we're not gonna have things.
There is. And I came to the table with it specifically because of Marianne's email that she sent out. Because the first thing that she sent out uh, was the email itself, but then embedded within the email was a 6-minute audio from Ra where he does talk about the purpose of everything being communion for the nine-centered being. And then she also shares a 30-minute audio that's basically her having a conversation or a monologue after after Ra died, to talk to kind of the human design community about the fact that this man like left a diamond with us, and like to not be sad because we still have the diamond here. And that's not the point that I wanted to get into, but the thing that she said in it that like really that I really loved was in her talking about PHS, because she tells the story, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but that she hadn't been in Ibiza for a long time. She was with her husband in the United States, and she had got invited to Ibiza, and she got the sacral go ahead. And when she went over there, you know, she hadn't been that far along in her experiment after, you know, having met Ra for the first time in Arizona. And something that was bothering her was PHS, that she never felt like her PHS was correct. And um and she was talking to Ra, and they were like laughing because she was telling him a story, and Ra was like, "Where's your north node or where's your south node?" And she just like laughed at him and was like, "I don't know. I'm just being a generator. I'm just responding." And I thought that was like an interesting moment, because he really seemed to like that, because I guess, you know, as generators, probably generators specifically, like they don't need to get as caught up in the details of all of their human design stuff, all of the jargon. They can really just like live life as like a sacral being, and that's good. But the main thing, the PHS thing that I thought was really interesting, was when she asked Ra about her PHS and why it never seemed to fit in, is what his response was to her. And I'm not sure what her PHS is, but basically he said that I didn't fully understand PHS when I was teaching it. The thing that's most important to you is in processing every single thing that you consume, not just food, is silence. And so I imagine that she either has a calm determination, or she has the sixth one on the left side. Um, I can't remember which is, like, I guess it's high or low sound, but maybe low sound. One of those two is what she probably has. And he just really emphasize something that I've been feeling into myself, in that we get too caught up in like the what of the food that we're eating, or the specifics of how we consume food specifically, as opposed to everything else that we're consuming and our ability to digest it. And he really like pointed out something that he didn't say in the PHS classes, because he was pretty focused on like what you're consuming in terms of physically material things that you're like physically putting into your body. Um, and he was like, for Marianne it was silence, and she realized that that was correct, because she needed to go back home and spend a long time alone in silence to be able to even process what had happened in Ibiza and the things that she had learned. And so that's not to say that again, this is not me trying to be reductive, because it's beyond just that. But I think there's something important there that I've been trying to get at and dig at when it comes to PHS, because for me, my PHS journey has been a long one. And right now I'm trying something that is more it is more materially focused on what I'm eating, but it's, you know, it's I realize that eating food in a calm environment is not enough for me to clean up myself to become healthy. And I wanted to understand why that was, because that seemed to be like the key, especially for someone whose environment is more important than the food itself, than what they're consuming. Like, how do I get well if the being just eating calmly is not enough? So, I realize that for me, the calmness is not just in the environment, but it's also like, am I eating food that causes me to be calm, that is an anti-inflammatory? Am I my is my nervous system generally in a state of calm? So when I'm consuming anything, is it calm when I'm consuming that thing? And on and on and on. Like, those are the questions I'm now asking myself, that I kind of already was on to, but that audio by Marianne just solidified it. So I don't know if there's anything you want to touch on there, Laura, with PHS. But that was something I wanted to just bring up for the pod.
Yeah, I do. Um, you aren't on Facebook anymore, so you didn't see the Facebook quote circulating, but it was a short one. And it was Raw, I think, talking to a generator, or just talking about generators and saying if you didn't get the if you well, I can't. I'm really bad at paraphrasing with my right mind. But basically, like, you shouldn't do PHS if your authority didn't give you the correct, okay, go. And it was like he was using, I say generator because he said, like, if you have a from your circle authority, in regards to trying PHS, like, don't do it. Like, it's not for you, it's not correct. And like, don't put your body through that because it's not correct. And it made me think about projectors and how we have to be invited because like we don't have the consistent energy the way a sacral person might to continue doing something. And to like it's weird to think about like the circumstances in which one is invited and recognized in order to do PHS or not. It doesn't necessarily happen, by the book. Um, and so it just made me think about, the correctness of whether it is actually correct for us to do PHS or try to follow our PHS in order to be, more correct as ourselves without that initiating step, without being properly initiated into it. And at the same time, like I can easily reflect on my whole life and look at all the times in which my body just naturally ate. Because again, it's the body. The body is going to be a body. Um, we have strategy and authority to bridge the body and the personality together to like come to some cohesive form. But like the body's still going to be the body and be the vehicle for the form to experience life through the Maya. And so it has an innate sense of how it's supposed to operate. Um, and yeah, I can like see so many times in my life in which I was eating or consuming a food or knowledge or information in a stimulating way. And that was just always correct. But like at the same time, there are plenty of times in which I was eating in a very unhealthy, stimulating environment, a very high stress, combative, argumentative environment. Thinking about like family dinners for a very long time. Whenever we had family come over for dinner, like my aunt, uncle, and cousin, we would always fight, and it would always be political. And for my solar plexus, it felt horrible and terrible to be amplifying all the emotions at the table. Um, and for those arguments to happen, like I wouldn't necessarily participate because I'm not one to participate in arguments, but I'd still be there, like, and receive the energies. And like as a Pisces moon, I'm a sensitive girly, and so it was a lot. And then somehow the cousins, not the parents, but the cousins, like me, my sister, and my cousin, we decided to go to Target and look for a board game. And we did just like for fun, thinking like, oh yeah, let's play a board game. And then we mutated the form of like how we interact as a family. It's like now instead of arguing or whenever things get a bit edgy at the table, someone will bring in like the sequence, like let's play sequence. Someone brings it up to try to like change the script of what's happening. And now we're very obsessed with playing different board games and like we have a wide collection of them, but we always usually go back to sequence. If you haven't played sequence, it's a great game, go play it. There's a jumbo version because the regular size board game is like itty bitty and very hard to see. Jumbo version's just like much more easy to deal with, even though it's huge. But it's a very fun game. So we've like mutated other families and like became helped them become obsessed with it. But my point being, I forgot how I got here. Those table situations were very much nerve inducing. I was very stimulated. They were not calm by any means. And so maybe it was correct, I guess, for my body to be taking in nutrients in that way, but it did not feel good. It felt terrible. I hated it. I just really did not. Actually, like, it didn't even feel good in my body. Like, I always felt like I couldn't digest the food properly after those big, heavy meals, being with a bunch of people. Um, I always feel like I just tend to overeat when I'm with a bunch of people because I'm not aware of what I'm putting in my body. It's like unconscious, and my body is just doing it on its own. And I tend to just consume way too much because I'm not aware. And yeah, but again, like I have a right passenger, not right passenger, but like a right passive body. So like I'm not supposed to be focused on what I'm eating, but it doesn't feel good, even if it is quote unquote like by the book correct. Um, but anyways, like there are plenty of times that I ate food in a correct nervous state and it was fine. And like I had a high metabolism as a child. And like now I don't try to control it for myself at least. Um, Probably because I'm not necessarily having any severe health issues that make me want to fix myself, in terms of my digestion. But like something that I do want to bring up in terms of nervous touch is my trichotillomania and dermatillomania, which I've mentioned before on the show. But Sarah, anything you want to respond to that before I get into those two things and being nervous touch?
Yeah, no, there's a couple things. One, I like what Ross said about like not going into PHS when it's not correct for you, because it reminds me of the fact that like this is a process. And I've said here, I think on the podcast last week, that like I was on all kinds of crazy crash diets in my early 20s and late 20s in an attempt to try and like heal myself, and none of them was where I don't know, what was my body ready for. And and looking at the diet that I'm on now, if I had tried to go onto this basically as a mind trying to go onto this diet, it may have been like a real problem for my body to be able to do it. What this diet actually felt more like for me was like me stepping out of the way and like wading into what is comfortable and what feels good for my body. And the point I'm trying to make there is that, you know, you cannot rush the process of healing or health. Like it is a process, and the deconditioning is a process. It cannot go faster. Just because I'm doing a raw diet right now does not mean that I suggest that other people do that at all. What I'm realizing as I'm doing it though is that like I had to do all of the other things that I've done in the past in order to get to a place where my awareness was such that I was able to kind of like do this without it becoming really like physically problematic for me. um and so there's that. And then also just to touch on what you said about, you know, I want to just really emphasize the fact that like I don't want to get too into the letter of the law as it comes to the way that these things show up. So I don't think that, okay, Lora in a environment where she is getting people screaming at each other is like correct food. Like just because her nervous system is activated does not mean something is correct. I think that there is a quality of stimulation of the nervous system that is probably better for her in a sense for that to be predominating the way that she consumes everything in her life, not just food. That would be my take on it. But it's not that like if I'm sitting here in a completely calm environment, that there isn't all kinds of other things that are happening internally that are taking me that are unhealthy enough that my body's still not digesting properly, right? So bitterness, the incorrect recognition, like there's so many things that are happening. Like we cannot kind of put this PHS in a vacuum and say let's look at just this, because there's many different facets of life that are happening simultaneous to like around us in a sense as we are consuming food on the daily, that are reflecting other aspects of ourselves and our process and where we are. And so I don't want to get too much like, okay, you're in a nervous environment, that means it's good to eat. It's more like I think that stimulating your nervous system, if that is predominantly the space that you're in, you're probably in a better place to be able to consume at large. And I don't just mean that in terms of food. I think that for your brain to work optimally, that's where it's going. But for me, it's the same thing. It's like I could be in a calm environment, but like the other 80% of my time, I'm not calm, emotionally regulated. My adrenals are activated. My nervous system, autonomic is activated, sympathetic, everything's activated all the time, really just the autonomic. And then I sit down to eat 20% of the time and I'm eating in a calm way. That does not, it's not enough. And so I want to like for me, the focus needs to be taken away around like specifically how we're eating to like how we're living our entire lives. And if that's in alignment with our mind, and it's, I guess you could say, optimized PHS. Now, this is just my take on it. This is just my perspective from where I'm at right now. But that's what I'm sensing internally, and that's what I was sensing that Ra was kind of trying to get at with his conversation with Marianne. Okay, that's all. You can go into trichotillomania
Well,
and dermatillomania.
before I do, I have something to say in response to what you
Okay.
said, which is it makes me think about um the nuance, like, well, not the getting smaller and smaller and smaller nuance, but like more of the getting bigger and bigger and bigger nuance. If I'm trying to explain like how I'm seeing it, like not the smaller and smaller being like tone and then base and then what's like below that, the neutrinos, but rather like going out and zooming out a bit and seeing the bigger picture of the gate that our PHS is rooted in. Um, and Laura Jo has brought this up before. Well, Lara, yo, I'm not gonna say it the American way. But she's brought it up before, I think in her Facebook group, but elsewhere on the internet too, about how we don't always pay attention to the gate that the PHS is rooted in, and it like serves a different picture. Mine being 63, 64, on my design side, my sun earth, Sarah's being 11 and 12. But like as you were talking and as I was talking and thinking about the different circumstances that felt safe, felt correct for my spleen. Again, like there's that whole like spleen safety thing of just like being in a chaotic, traumatizing environment and saying it's stimulating, it's correct, like it's not for my spleen and not for my open solar plexus. Um, but that's not where my PHS on Earth are. My PHS on Earth are 6447. But thinking about the times that do feel correct are like moments when I'm doing something. Like for me, even though I'm a motorless projector, my sun on my personality side is in gate 9, which is in the sacral center, and my persona gets fulfilled through doing correctly what I'm invited to do, which is trauma in and of itself. But yeah, I'm thinking about like eating while I'm cooking, or when I wouldn't ever eat breakfast at home, like high school, middle school. Maybe I did in elementary school, but I don't really remember. My mom probably fed me before going to school, so I probably ate something. But when I could be autonomous, I think that's the right word, and choose to eat my own food whenever I was hungry, I wouldn't eat breakfast before going to school because I wouldn't be hungry. But as soon as I got in a classroom, I would be starving and I would eat while in class. And then I would like eat my lunch in first period and then like not have food for lunch and like have to buy something else. But like being in that stimulating educational environment would automatically turn on the hunger pangs and make me want to eat something. But that's, I guess, like a bit more 64, 63, with like the thinking things. But even at home, like if I'm gonna make food for myself, I'm not gonna just sit down and eat it when it's done. I'm gonna go and do something while I'm eating it. Even if it's like something small, reading a book, listening to something. I can't, I have to multitask for that. Like I can't just sit and be calm and focus on the food that I'm putting into my mouth. That's just like weird for me. Whereas like at the dinner table, like you're participating in conversation, but like you're doing that, like you're sitting together, and it's like the sitting down part that sitting at a table feels weird for my digestion. But again, that seems to me like more mentally if I'm processing it like a 9 thing, not a 63, 64 thing. My body wants to be doing something while I'm eating, doing something, focusing on details while I'm eating. And so I wonder if there is like this connectivity between, those two top variables, the design center on both the personality as well as the design side, to bring a bigger picture to say it's not just, 63 or 64, it's not just Sarah's 11 and 12, because for Sarah, like calmness, her determination, part of that is being emotionally calm, and her sun earth on her personality side are in the solar plexus in 63, I mean 63 and 36 and 6. So it like makes me think about the emotionality of being calm, the emotionality of the nervous system, and how that's an integrative part of her PHS, because it paints part of the picture. It's like there's brush strokes intermingled with like the other PHS brush stroke. It's like not in a vacuum. And you kind of have to look at it all together. Like for Sarah to be calm, it's to be emotionally calm. Um, for her nervous system to be in that state. And the solar plexus is a piece of that. So wanted to share that, but now you probably have stuff to say in response to that
No, I
before I get into
honestly,
trichotillomania.
all I have to say is I agree. Agreed.
Okay.
Absolutely, yes, yes. I don't really have anything else to add, but that's exactly what I was trying to get at of that like nuance that we miss of like trying to get too zoned in that like, we forget to like zone out and look at like the big broad picture of certain things because I think that part of the reason I'm sick right now, and okay, I guess I do have something to say, but part of the reason that I'm sick right now, and I use sick very loosely, but part of the reason my body's going through something is because I was stuck in a not calm, emotional, or otherwise state for the majority of my life in transference, surely, but like also physically transferred. And so that is like something that I'm having to like literally like on the level of my physical body and frequency unravel in order to get to a place where like everything has just become less inflamed. um and so, this is I feel like detox, the doctor that I've been following says detoxification is an art, and I think I mentioned this, but like deconditioning is an art. And so we cannot just, that's why where it gets me with people who are like, I understand everything the way that Ross said it. I'm like, yeah, but this is an art. Like, you can't just take what Ross said and just apply it in every way. You have to know when to zoom in, you have to know when to zoom out, you have to know which set of goggles to look at this thing through, because there may be things that you're missing by being too close to it. I've used this analogy a lot. Like, it's like having a gigantic home, mansion, whatever you want to call it, and you're out in the shed standing in the corner, looking inside of a tiny, wood panel that is in the corner that has a tiny hole in it in the shed, and trying to explain the entirety of your property from that vantage point. You can't. So it's just, I don't have the answers for everybody else, but I just want everybody to, like, from my perspective, what I'm trying to get at is that you have to know when to look at things from a specific vantage point and when to look at them from a different one. And I think that's what Laura was trying to say too, more or less. But sorry, Laura, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I mean, it makes sense. Like, whereas like someone who has calm touch, who has a open solar plexus, like it might be different, like whether how much emotionality fits into whether they're calm or not. Or someone who has a defined solar plexus, who has nervous touch, or someone with a defined solar plexus who has like high sound or low sound. Like it's all, you can't just look at it by itself. Like you have to see the whole picture. But like speaking of nervous touch, and my mother just started vacuuming, and the noise gets to me. So maybe I'll have to save this for a next episode because um, I can't focus, which is like you would think like, oh, that noise, it's stimulating. Like, no, it's grating on my nervous system and it's in the wrong way, and I can't focus right now. And so I could just keep talking rambles until it passes. But for whatever reason, I can't focus. Um,
Well, do you want to just speak on the trichotillomania and the dermatillomania before we go, or do you want to save that for next week?
well, it doesn't matter. Um, I actually no, I feel like looking at my thoughts, trying to analyze my thoughts, I feel like I want to go into depth with that. And therefore the noise is preventing me from being able to focus on my thoughts enough to be able to go into depth in that. But something I want to touch on lightly that I have the
Okay.
capacity to mentally do so right now for whatever reason is fear. Because like I said several weeks ago, I sprained my ankle and I haven't gone back to exercising in ballet class quite yet. I'm trying to do physical therapy at home, but it's annoying the fear that happens in the body, like when accidents happen. Like I've sprained my ankle so many times that I shouldn't be afraid of like going back to ballet class. But for whatever reason, whenever I picture myself dancing in my head, I picture myself re-injuring my ankle. I can't fantasize and like create the mental imagery of me doing dance moves correctly anymore. my cells have like a cellular memory right now that has fear like concentrated into it. Not that like when it happened, I wasn't fearful. Like when it happened, I was like, oh man, shucks, this is annoying, but it's fine. I was like in a fine mood when it happened. And I was like, don't mind me. Let me just be here in the corner and be injured. Because the pain doesn't kick in right away, like when you have an injury. The pain kicks in later when the inflammation like starts to swell and like nerves get compressed. So in the beginning, I was like totally fine in class, and I was like, haha, good times. It's okay, I'll be fine. Um, but somehow from like that moment to this moment, like my anxiety has evolved to be the point where like I can't like I imagine because to get the woes of having no motors, it's so much easier just to pretend to do ballet in your head rather than do it physically, like with your actual body, with your actual muscles. And, you know, in sports performance, they say to do that trick, to like envision, and it helps you do things better, to like see yourself doing it. Or like, I feel like there's been scientists that have proven, and I don't know how this plays, I wonder how this plays into leftness and rightness in the mind, or definition and not in the head and ajna, but like imagining yourself doing physical exercises actually affects the tonality of those muscles without you doing the physical work, which I think is interesting. I'll have to like research that because like I've saw those articles like years and years and years ago. But again, it's so much easier to like picture yourself doing exercise than having to actually physically do it with your body, even though like you reap more benefits when you do it yourself. Anyways, I spend a lot of time in my head thinking about doing ballet without actually doing ballet. And like now when I think about doing it, it's painful and it's disastrous. And like there's fear built into it. And I don't know how this necessarily pertains to my spleen. Or perhaps it's like the 63, 64 and the doubt that is in 63 of like, and the 64 looking at the past and trying to predict patterns for the future. Like maybe it is just my head being caught up in it. But yeah, that's like been in my head recently, and I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I'm obviously thinking about your 64-47, of just that kind of mental pressure anyway, that you kind of have to figure out a way to like allow, like it's like you have to figure that you don't have to figure it out, but that has its own way of kind of untying itself over time that you can't control, but that like it has its own process, I guess. It's hard for someone with an open head to fully conceptualize what it's like to not um, to have a defined head. But, as far as practical, just I guess you could say, I don't want to say advice, but practical ideas as it concerns this. I mean, on the one hand, if it's possible, refocus your attention on something else when you're thinking about ballet, and keep doing that until you finally go back to ballet, and then be super careful multiple times um, while you're in ballet, not doing anything that is potentially injurious. Is that a fucking word? I don't know. So that, eventually you'll just get over it and you'll forget about it entirely. It
No. I mean, I appreciate the advice, but okay, so going back to a past instance, I have fallen and like hurt myself before. This was like my other foot that ended up broken from a ballet injury, like 10 years ago, 2014, well, like December 2013, but um, it caused like cellular trauma in my body to the point where like my body was no longer as free as it was with being careless. Like there's a certain level of abandon. This is like very caution abandon gate 12. Like there's a certain level of abandon that you want in ballet class with your movement, like with any movement, any sort of physical exercise. Like you don't want to be too stiff, you don't want to be too rigid because you're going to limit yourself and you're not going to be able to do things correctly. You will have to, because you're just limiting your capacity. Like if you have a certain level of abandon, then you can push past the boundaries of what you think you can do. You can turn more, turn faster, jump higher. But like, and I see it a lot in all the older dancers. Like as we age, we have a lot more fear in our bodies and become much more constricted. We have much more caution with like how we move, and they're unwilling to jump higher. They're unwilling to turn more than once. Like they're very, very cautious and timid with their bodies, which makes sense. Like because they're not cross training, they're not exercising their muscles to be able to have the freedom of trusting their body to do not the extreme, but like to go above and beyond what they think they're capable of. And so when I injured myself the first time, like my dancing got worse, not just because I was healing from an injury, but because of the mental capacity that I had over myself, thinking if I do this, I'm gonna hurt myself and fall. Not like active thoughts, but passive thoughts, like the passive fears that live in the body. Um, the caution that's there. And so like yes, I get like don't think about it now because it's just like what's the purpose of thinking about it? But sometimes you can't control your thoughts or like think about something else to distract yourself. Which I guess connects to trichotillomania. Like my mother has now since gone away to the other part of the house, so I have quietness and the ability to think more clearly. So maybe I will get into that. But it's cellular. It's like in the memory of the cells and like of our habits and of how much our muscles think that they can or can't move. And obviously, like, we'll see what happens when I actually do go to back to ballet class. But for now, just trying to do physical therapy and experiencing pain with it, it's just frustrating. But sorry, I'd like naysayed on what the advice you were trying to give.
No, it's okay, because I think this actually it connects a lot to some other things, because I do relate as a gymnast who was working on a round off back handspring back layout and back layout full before I fell on my head.
Ooh.
And it wasn't like I hurt myself, but I just stopped being able to get in like to have the abandon that you're talking about, in order to get into those types of things. I just stopped being able to get there, like I was afraid of doing a back tuck. Like I guess I couldn't physically pull myself out of the fear to the point where I was like able to kind of go back into it with the level of juge that I had prior to. So I don't think that that's like a not real phenomenon. I know that it's real because I've experienced it. And also when I talk about trauma and physical trauma and anxieties and all of these things that I've talked about on past episodes as it relates to like my own developmental trauma, like that has affected my physical capacity to be around people, like other human beings set off the trauma in my nervous system that I don't it's not like I'm looking at them and like, wow, they look like a bear, but my body's reacting to them like it's a lion or a tiger, you know what I mean? And so I fully understand that there's these different like levels of our own capacity to like let go of things. But I am someone in the like after dealing with all that stuff, I still am in the camp, and I always will be in the camp of thinking that we can unravel it and thinking that we can assess, or we can refocus our attention. And I want to use the term focus in a way where there's no control happening here, but again it comes down to awareness, where the cellular damage that has been done to us on a nervous system awareness level is no longer the primary driving force of our behavior. How that happens, I don't know. I think it's, again, going back to deconditioning is an art. Sometimes you have to put on the gas, aka sometimes you have to put yourself back into the situation that's uncomfortable, and sometimes you have to pull away from it. It's like getting into like being a driver and getting into your first accident. Like if you decide to never drive again, you're never driving again, and the fear will consume you, and that will be the end of it. But if you are a driver and you get into an accident and you're maybe timid, but you get back on the road, you keep trying, maybe you don't go that far, you just go around the block, eventually you may have it within you built the cellular memory, like regenerated to the point where you can do some of those things. It's not a um, panacea. It's not like something that can be generalized for every single instance of every single situation that creates this trauma in the body, where the body becomes, negatively reactive to it. But it comes back to what I was talking about last week with the spleen, and also like the extremes of detoxification sometimes being necessary, where our spleen will always tell us what will not kill us or what will kill us. But sometimes we end up on a road eating and consuming things that maybe one drop in the bucket doesn't matter, but we keep consuming those things because our body is seeking homeostasis, that a regenerative detox on a physical food level may be really beneficial to reset our understanding of what even our body wants. And so if we're, stuck in the fear of it, and we're staying in the homeostatic response of that fear, we're never getting out of it. And so sometimes that might be correct, but other times it's not going to be correct. Sometimes it's correct to eat the salami. Other times it's probably best for you to go on a freaking, some kind of a Whole30 or a cleanse to reset your kind of base level of what homeostasis is. And, I'm not looking back on gymnastics and being like, wow, I really wish that I had done this, that, or the other thing so I could have done that. I was unconscious then, and I would have no doubt hurt myself because my awareness and my intentionality wasn't there. So it wasn't like I had the level of trust in my body because of my relationship to it then that would have led to positive outcomes for me to continue doing those kind of insane flips. Like I didn't have that connection. And so not doing that was probably better for me. Not continuing to try was probably better for me. Whereas for other instances of other things, as your awareness grows and your confidence and trust in your physical self and yourself grows, and in life for that matter, it's like you no longer are as worried about kind of going back to the scene of the crime, if you will, and repeating certain things. But that can't be forced. That's not a forced thing. That's just again, it's a dance, and it's an understanding of when it's time to dig in and pull in, and when it's time to to release and let go. And nobody's going to be able to answer that question except for the person who it's happening to.
Something that comes to mind after everything you said is with like the digestive re what I always like look at the phrases you say and like the words you use. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna remember that to repeat what she said. Like I cannot. But in terms of resetting the body in terms of like a digestion thing, made me think of massage therapy, which like I went to massage therapy school. I never actually got certified or licensed because of left world strategic complications. So whatever. But part of what we learned is like, the body holds on to so much memory in the muscles, in the actual physical tissues. And massage is a great way to actually release that and to let it go. Like whether it's like really aggressive massage, like deep tissue, um, like active, sports massage, or if it's like the super gentle craniosacral therapy in which you're like using a dime's worth of pressure on the body. Um, Both help release the cellular memory that's there, that's telling the body to guard, which again connects to the nervous system and nervous stimulus with like calm touch, nervous touch that we were talking about. Of it made me think like I should probably, get a massage and massage my body to like release the cellular memory that is there. But like I went to the chiropractor after my injury and like I could tell like my body was guarded. Like my body did not want to be touched as much as it's usually free. And like, yeah, like touch me, massage me. Like there's certain parts of my body that do not want someone touching them, which like it's in massage school, it was very funny because like part of the way those nerves respond is like by being ticklish. Or like by tensing up, like part of tensing up creates the ticklish sensation. And I have to laugh because, like, for me, it's my butt. Like, my butt will not allow anyone to touch it. And so, like, just to get any sort of massage on my glutes, which, like, I use as a dancer. Like, dancers need to, like, release the gluteus maximus and, like, all the other glute muscles, not just glutes, but, like, the piriformis, the deep rotators, and the buttocks, because they get so tight and so tense. Um, Tight ass here. And so, um, I really always needed to like get those released and I couldn't because like my body would not let anyone like if you just like try to gently touch it like no it's gonna like be so ticklish, and it just makes me laugh so much, like reflecting on that. But anyways, yeah, like at the chiropractor, my body was like, no, like my muscle seized when he tried to like do some releases. Um, just because like it's in that state of nervousness, in that state of tension of like something happened and now we're in shock and like we don't feel safe being in the form until the nervous system can calm down enough after this happened to be like, okay, like we can go back to our homeostatic state. But a great way of like releasing trauma is like the physical tissue manipulation. So putting that out there if you're trying to figure out what to do when you haven't gotten a massage yet. So as someone like who doesn't ever go get massages again because like my glutes are ticklish. Um, but yeah, I never go out and get massages. But that's also part of like not having money too, which is connects to the whole material way, which eventually will get talked about one day here on the show, not sure when. But yeah, something else you said though, which connects to the trichotillomania and dermatillomania, is the the quality. Again, I won't be able to reuse the words that you said, but like to the point where like our body is unconscious and like our habits rule us and we can't really convince ourselves to behave otherwise because our patterns are so deeply ingrained, which is like why we bring awareness to it so we become aware of what we're doing. But when it comes to addiction and compulsive behaviors, like you can be aware of it, but like your body is still going to feel so compelled to do the thing that it feels like it needs to do in order to have some sort of control over itself or state of peace or whatever it is with stimming. Um, and so like my trichotillomania, it's mostly focused on my lower legs, my shins. It's been bad recently. Um, and it might be, I told Sarah that I think I'm on the autism spectrum, like very mild, like I can look at people in the eyes, I'm fine. But there's other things like I don't get subtext easily. Like I don't quite understand what people are trying to tell me if they're using um various words or phrases or idioms. An example is like my dad yesterday asked me to make a little bit of lemonade. And then I was like, wait, does he mean literally a little bit or does he like mean colloquially a little bit? And so I had to ask him, like, how much do you actually want me to make? A little bit, like a glass for you or a pitcher? And he's like, that's just a saying. I want you to make a lot, but we just say a little bit. So it's like weird because I've been doing this my entire life. Like I just haven't been aware of it to realize that I don't understand how much people intend with what they say. Like I have to ask for clarification a lot, and I was never really aware of that until like this past week or so. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. Um, Part of me potentially being on the spectrum is needing to stim, and my body has done it its entire life. When I was a child, it was biting my nails. And at some point, which is a specific point, it was when I was studying abroad in France, I stopped because I had a coworker there who told me to use who she was like showing me her nails and was like saying I started using this particular nail polish, which hardens and strengthens the nails. It's great. I was influenced. And so I started doing that. And in doing that, I stopped biting my nails because I was constantly painting them. And they tasted gross and disgusting because they had nail polish on them. But anyways, they became like long and strong and hard and healthy. And in doing so, like my stim had to change. And so like I started picking my face more, which like I'm guessing I did before too, but not to the same extent that I did when it was severe because I had another stim. I bit my nails instead to self-soothe. Um, Anyways, like I started picking my face and like somehow I got to the point where I was like, this is really bad for me. Like, I'm going to stop doing it. And then that stim got transferred. Instead of picking my face, I started picking my legs. And like, I don't necessarily care about having shaved legs or not. Like, that's not the point, but it's like a tactile thing, which Sarah understands because she would split ends in her hair because it's a tactile thing. Like, you feel it and like the sensation bothers you. And so you have to self-soothe and do the thing. Anyways, it's been going on since I think like 2015, maybe 2014. I'm not exactly sure when it started, but it's been a long time. Basically a decade of me doing this thing. And um this past week, I don't know what possessed me, but like, okay, well, no. So I stopped biting my nails, right? Sorry, story time. It's 11:56 for you sometimes. I stopped biting my nails. But I got exhausted with having to do my nails every week for them to be healthy so I wouldn't bite them. And several years ago, maybe two-ish, three-ish years ago, I stopped and I started biting them again because I didn't have nail polish on them, to deter me from biting. And I was like, I think I was watching Game of Thrones, and that caused enough anxiety in me to do it unconsciously. And so all of a sudden, I'm a nail biter again. And I try to stop, but I do it unconsciously. Like I'm not aware of it when I do it. It just happens when I'm stressed or nervous. Whereas the leg picking thing, it's much more like me needing to do it, feeling compulsive about it as a conscious effort of like my mind compels me to say like you have to do this thing right now because it's gonna feel good if you do it, and if you don't, you're gonna feel bad. Um, Compared to the unconscious nail biting. Anywho, something possessed me this past week to paint my nails for the first time in several years, and I did. And now I'm not biting them, which is like cool, great, because it tastes disgusting. And again, that's an unconscious behavior, so I don't feel the need to do so. But man, oh man, like my skin picking has gotten a lot worse in the past like 2 weeks, probably since I sprained my ankle around that time, because it can't be as active. I'm more bedridden because my ankle hurts, and so like this is something I do when I'm sitting on my bed and like listening to an audiobook or something. And it's gotten to the point where like I keep losing my tweezers, and when I'm trying to find my tweezers and I can't, like I go ballistic internally. Like I freak out. I like tear apart my room. It's like comical to look at myself and be like, what are you doing? Like, do you really need to do this right now? No, but my body says like you absolutely must have to do this right now. It's like a drug, an addiction. I need my hit and I can't get it, and my body freaks out. And so I go crazy. And so like I've lost, which is a good thing. I've lost two pairs of tweezers, but I have a third pair that I'm using, unfortunately. Like I can say unfortunately, my body likes it because it likes the stimulus, but my mind doesn't like it. Um, but it's just been like a very interesting week, like looking at my behavior and being like, this isn't good for you. Like, you need to stop doing this. Like, this isn't healthy. There's consequences to this. Maybe you should change. Do you really need to do this right now? Can't you just do something else? But no, like the body takes over, which is like probably not a healthy form of the body. But again, like nervous touch. I've asked before in the PHS group on Facebook whether anyone else with nervous touch has like some sort of compulsive behavior or it was just me. And it seems like it was just me. Like it's not a nervous touch thing, which I thought like it might be because it seems logical. Like nervous touch, you need to be stimulated and you need to like use your fingers for touch. Like it makes sense logically, but other people did not have the same issues that I had. And like here Sarah is with her calm touch, who also has to stim or like do something physical with her fingers, in order for her to feel calm, for me to feel adequately nervous, I guess, even though it is calming at the same time. Anywho, it's been a struggle, but like you can be aware of it and you can watch the body freak out and like tear things apart, but you can't, the mind is like not strong enough to tell the body to stop. Which, like the overarching picture of this is like addiction and like how that plays into human design. Because we brought up Matt Rice several episodes ago, which his last name is actually Reiseniger, which is why I couldn't find any information about him. He does have a divine spleen, by the way, Sarah. Looked up his chart, not necessarily knowing his birth time, but I
Mm.
knew his birthday. I think it was the 5710 with the 34, 34, 57, 10 that he has defined. I think he also has the 1156. But why did I bring? Oh, he brought up in one of his videos like addiction with a sacral person. Like a sacral person might be like, I want alcohol, I want drugs. And that they might think that that's their sacral center telling them, like, yes, I want this thing, I need to have this thing is good for me. But like, it's poison to the system. It's like not actually healthy for the form, whether it's an addictive behavior or an addictive consumptional thing that they're putting into their body, which is why deconditioning is so complex. Like big picture, it's like why We can't just, go at it and be like, okay, I'm perfect, I'm complete, I've done it. Because there's so many patterns that are deeply, deeply, deeply late. It's why it's a 7-year process, because there's so many patterns that we've been doing for so long that our cells remember them. And it's the mind that has initiated the cells into the process of having these patterns and these habits and not the form. And we have to clear it out. But it takes so much time. And like here I am, like aware of my body, aware of its habits, aware that they're not good for me. Have tried found ways to like change it, or do something about it to stop the behavior. Like have not found long-term success. Like I've found periods of time in which I can stop, especially if I'm like super busy and active with like life. But that is like so exhausting and causes immediate burnout for my spirit that it's not sustainable to be super busy. Again, because perhaps I'm on the spectrum and I need some sort of stimulus to decompress from the chaos of life because I'm a right person, right mind, right brain, with no motors and a projector. And it's just like, it's who I am. And so like I should probably replace that behavior with something else that's adequately stimulating, that's not painful or detrimental. Um, but yeah, it's why deconditioning is such a long process. Sorry, this was a very long tangent. Sarah, I'm sure you have lots to say.
You're good. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Is Matt just really quick, is Matt a projector
No,
too?
he's a generator because he has 34 to the 57. He's a
Oh,
generator.
okay. Sorry, I missed that. Okay, interesting. I didn't know. Well, 1156 too, brother in stimulation. The 1156 is a stimulating channel in and of itself. But yeah, there's so many different things that just made me think about because I smoke cigarettes, and what you described with the tweezers reminded me so much of my when I had a vape, when I had a Juul, how I would like lose it and like my whole self would just go completely ballistic looking for it. Like I had to pause everything to
Yes.
find it kind of thing.
Yes.
So I fully completely understand that kind of behavior. And as somebody who has successfully quit smoking, which not a lot of people can really say, I also feel like someone who's never going to call myself a smoker because my awareness has shifted around smoking. And so I don't feel like the mechanism that allowed me to smoke before is no longer there. Does that mean I will never have a cigarette again? No, I'll probably have one at some point in the future. I don't like making like definitive statements, but I do know that I'm never going to be a smoker again. I'm never going to be someone that can unconsciously smoke like that again. And it's not because I decided that I didn't like my habit. It's because eventually my consciousness shifted enough that no longer the could fit into the identity that I have. It's the awareness changes and then the habit has nowhere to go because you're no longer being unconscious about things. That doesn't mean that you won't stop and do it on occasion unconsciously, but it's also not that you can control what's happening right now. Like that's the funniest part of it is like you can't stop yourself from doing it right now because you know it's not good, just like I can't stop myself from doing, my own like hair thing because I know it's not good. I do understand though two things. One, the Laura that has done this, that has always had a stem, and the Sarah that has always had a stem, whatever we want to call it, has never been fully deconditioned, has never been self, has never been living their trajectory, has never been like in alignment with their purpose, has never been kind of fully out of transference. And so that Laura, the not self transferred Laura, is always going to stem, no question. Same with me. That Sarah is always going to stem. But I know that I think that as we decondition, the things that we use to soothe ourselves are going to be less necessary because we're going to be less in need of soothing because we are going to be living our purpose, being distracted by our purpose, doing what's correct for us. And I, I don't want to, there's no shame here. I don't care if what you're doing is whatever, if it's self-harming or otherwise. I don't, it's not about that. I genuinely think though that the closer again we get to ourselves and living our purpose and being individuated and being differentiated and not being transferred, the closer we are to not doing those things that may, the things that we that are not self is preoccupied with us doing right now. We're doing it because there's a lot of free time that we have while we're trying to get out of what we used to be and into what we actually are. And that is, again, this is my sense. This is why I'm not hard on myself about it, but it's also why, like, I am very diligent in my own attempts to expand my consciousness, because truth is like something that when it comes to you and you think it's like a sentence, it's not. It's a vibration, you meeting a frequency of something that you are finally a match to that frequency. When truth comes to you, it changes you on a cellular level, and then from there you have to figure out a way to live by it, like we live by strategy and authority. And you have to be diligent in your attempts to live by it. That doesn't mean you're going to be perfect at it, and that doesn't mean you're not going to have to get reintroduced to that truth. But the more you understand truth, the farther away you get from doing the things that your old self, your conditioned self used to do. This has just been my experience. It's like what I'm doing right now for my body. I know in my body that it's correct to be doing what I'm doing. I know what my body needs in order to heal. But that doesn't mean that it's not like there's not moments where I'm trying to do the thing that it's not supposed to do. I've had a sense, or like a North Star, or like there's been a sense in myself that this is what the thing is that I needed to heal the whole time. But I was never consciously in the vicinity of being able to absorb it, like to be able to absorb this for myself. And everyone's truth is different. So it's not like I can say, this is my truth, so you can adopt it. Like you have to figure out what your own truth is. But when you get there, your consciousness expands. It cannot go back into its old patterns. You can go back into your old physical patterns, but then the truth will revisit you. Your consciousness will expand, and the cyclical dance or the spiral dance will continue until you get to a point where there's just things that are other than this will be in the forefront. This will no longer be primary or even a consideration. And do I know that for sure? I know that because of other instances of being addicted to things and getting out of them. I don't know everyone's path is going to look like mine. I don't know everyone's experiences are going to look like mine. But I'm just saying this because this is how I deal with my own compulsive behaviors. I'm not going to just be like, okay, well, I'm nervous touch, so I'm always going to do this. I think that there's going to be something that, as my life and my trajectory and my purpose continues to unfold, there'll be something that takes its place that feels less physically detrimental. Um, and that's my belief, so it's not like it has to be anyone else's, but that's how I believe that everything's going to go down. Um, and I could be right or I could be wrong, but yeah, that's basically where I'm at on the compulsive stuff as of late.
That's helpful to hear. Thank you. Gives me hope. I'm just like now waiting, like, okay, come on, consciousness, change, change, find that
Yeah,
mutation so that we can no longer do this thing. Yeah, because
no,
like looking at myself this past week, like you said with your vape, like, yeah, it was comical and scary. And just like, is this really who you want to be? No, but it is who you are right now. So we're not going to go and try to, like, again, we don't have the willpower with our undefined egos to change our habits in that way. That's not our experience of change and form and how we evolve. It's, maybe for others, but not for us. And so, yeah, very helpful. So thank you. Also, like, yeah, the no judgment, because like I am judging myself thinking I should be different, but I appreciate that. Like, you're not judging me for this, nor do I judge you for doing your things. It's easier, like, when you see someone else who like has the compulsive behavior, um, to be like, Yeah, totally fine. Like you do you. Like it's not harming me, so I'm fine watching you. Like apart like from drugs, and then it's like more concerning. But when it's yourself, like it's easy to go into the judgmental mode and self-shame because that's how our lovely society has conditioned us to behave.
Well, the 12.3 too doesn't help, but it's like the thing that like I guess I also want to say is, there are moments where it's like the tide, it comes in, it comes out, but eventually like the whole terrain changes. And that's what I've been realizing within myself. And so it's not to say like just give up the ghost and be like fully accepting and like don't take on any type of mantle of wanting to change it. It's just understanding that like you're not going to get there from here. And so so the journey of getting there is going to be a journey of consciousness changing, not of like physically trying to manipulate things, although sometimes it can be you attempting to physically manipulate things, and in that attempting you somehow unwittingly come into contact with a consciousness changing, mutating experience. And so, but again, you can't control that either. And so it's like I said before, it's like knowing when to dig in and knowing when to let up and knowing when to put on, attempt something, allowing the transits to give you the little added ego, bump to like try something different or new or something that requires willpower, versus when that's not what the transits are giving you or asking of you or allowing you, so it's an imperfect process. This is also why I feel like, the third line is, the material plane is like a third line plane, because it's like you can't get there straight away. In this consciousness expanding, there's so much. It feels like two step forward, one step back. Like it is the dance. Like that's how this world and change and growth it happens. And there's nobody that can convince me otherwise, unless you have what Ra would have called like a sartorian, like all of a sudden like your whole everything is different. But in the real like mundane version of things, that's how it goes. And so this has it's like interesting. You can be like, wow, look at the unit that is Sarah is having like a meltdown over this thing, because also the unit that is Sarah right now isn't feeling fully in her purpose, fully living her life, fully correct as herself. She still knows that her soul is pulling her towards something that's different. And so there's things that she's doing to self-soothe that missing piece too. And so there's so many things other than the physical body, because the physical body is, the grossest manifestation of all of the other aspects of self. And so its spiritual longings can also exist within it, if it's not being fed in that way. And so we have to like, again, look at it from multiple different vantage points, so we don't get too identified with what's happening here, that we lose basically the fact that like this world is always changing, we're always changing, everything's always changing. And so we're never fully stuck. Our frequency, our essence is always going to stay the same, but then even that gets more honed in. Jesus, this was a long episode, wasn't it?
I know, because I tagged it on at the end. I wasn't sure if there was energy, but it came out, and I'm glad it did because I have been given solid wisdom from you, which is deeply appreciated. So I'm glad we did go on and on and on because it's good to hear.
Good.
Hopefully it mutates people in the audience too,
Yeah.
correctly.
Well, and that's just really quick. Sorry, everybody. That's also something interesting, because I was having a conversation with my aunt, and like there is so many moments where I want something that I say to have an impact. Like there's so many things that like I like sneak in little sentences here and there, thinking maybe if I say it in this way, she'll get it. And it's like, and that's how it is with everyone. But it's so funny what the actual things that get in there are never have anything to do with me ever having any control over what it is that I'm saying. And so it's like, there's this quality I know that I have. Maybe anyone who has the 1156, or you might have it too, of like you say something, again, unwittingly, not planned, not strategized. and it like worms its way into somebody's consciousness, and it changes things. And
Well, it's scary. There's times when people go to you and they're like, I remember once you gave me solid advice. You said this, this, this. And I'm like, I did what? I said what? And you kept on to that for years and years. Oh goodness. Like the fifth line scariness right there. Like looking at the long-term consequences you can have on someone's life with the things you unknowingly say with your right mind. Hooey. It's scary stuff.
hey, that's happened to me too, and I'm not even a fifth line, so maybe it is 11:56, and I'm just like, wait, what? Like I was like half on drugs when I said that to you. Why would you listen to me? But we're in the Maya. It's really ghetto out there in the streets of this Maya, and so it's like they probably still more solid advice than they're gonna get elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway. Is there anything else you got, Laura?
No, I think I'm complete. How about
Okay.
you?
I'm good too, and it is time for me to eat another piece of fruit. So we can call it a day.
Thank you for listening, everyone, especially if you hung out until the very end of these long 2 hours. We
Yeah.
appreciate you. Especially my fifth line that has like no idea what's coming out and reaching across the ethers. Follow us on the platforms of our great cross of planning industrial revolution. To like, wow, recapping here as we go to the end of our episode. On Instagram at Projector Stories podcast, Projector Stories. I don't know. And YouTube is Projector Stories podcast. The other platforms are just Projector Stories. Follow, like,
Yes.
subscribe, press all the buttons on your phone. Accidentally call the SOS button as my nephew did today while I was FaceTiming with him. Just like little kids on phones. It's the darnest thing. Um, Catch us next time. Thank you for listening. Yada yada yada. Anything else, Sarah?
Nope. Thank you guys. See you next time.
Catch
Bye.
catch you on the flip side.